Mr. President, may I present the Honorable Michael B. Oren for the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa.
Mr. and Mrs. Bornstein, are you there? Michael's parents were. So Shep Nachas also. Your son is finally a Yeshiva buffer. Come forward, please. Michael Oren, for over 30 years you have served the Jewish people through your courage and commitment. Your unique combination of scholarship, service, and substance make you a paradigm of Israel advocacy for our time. Raised as a caring and involved Jew in West Orange, New Jersey. Probably living in a garden home. You earned your bachelor's and master's degrees at Columbia University and a doctorate in Near Eastern Studies from Princeton. By making Aliyah, you began a romance with the people, their story, and their homelands, a journey that continues boldly. You joined the Israel Defense Fund, President. Israel Please contribute to the Israel Defense Fund. You joined the Israel Defense Forces, Sahal, with the unquenchable desire to serve as a paratrooper. Sanfan. When your recruiter placed you in the artillery instead, you risked jail by insisting that you be stationed with the more elite unit. After finally agreeing, you served on the front lines of the First Lebanon War, proudly wearing the red boots of a paratrooper. In building your life in Israel, you and Sally have raised Yoav, Leah, and Noam with the same passions and values that have driven you to proudly wave the banner of the Jewish state and the Jewish people. With Israel as the focus of your prolific scholarship and teaching, your work sheds the light of nuance onto a region clouded in the darkness of sectional strife. Your books, 6 Days of War and Power, Faith, and Fantasy, achieve the intricate balance of maintaining the highest of academic standards while remaining approachable for the general population. With the integrity of a gifted historian, you have portrayed all of the challenges facing Israel in a complicated world, while reaffirming the historic legitimacy of the Jewish state. Your scholarship has garnered significant attention in academia. You served as a visiting professor at Harvard and Yale and Georgetown in preparation for your eventual visit at Yeshiva. And in Israel, you have served as a distinguished fellow at the Shalem Center. Your contributions to the New Republic and Azure, among others, allowed you to both contribute to, and in many cases, conduct the symphony of ideas and ideals that help shape the Jewish and global communities. On May 3rd, 2009, the State of Israel recalled you to active service, appointing you its ambassador to the United States. In this challenging position, the Jewish state has entrusted you with its most critical diplomatic posting. Your nation commended this task to one of its finest, most capable, maybe most masochistic citizens. At a time of great challenge and uncertainty, you have conducted yourself with integrity and humility. And the only demonstrators in this room share their love and respect for you and for our Tzenu HaKadosh. Ambassador Michael Oren, for your unwavering support of the State of Israel, your steadfast intellectual commitment to the history and the destiny of the Jewish people, and your representation of a people and a state deserving of a courageous and inspiring leadership, I am honored to confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters honoris causa. In token thereof, I cause to be placed upon your shoulders this visible symbol of our high regard for you, and I hand you this diploma. Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Michael Oren.
President Jill, I'm so glad you said I was a Samkhan from the Israel Defense Defense Forces and not a cub son of the Israel Defense Fund. That would have been different. What a great kavod. What a great kavod. To you, President Joel, Chancellor Lamb, to Chairman Kressel, the Deans of Administration, faculty, to my distinguished fellow honorees this afternoon, to my Mori, Senator Joseph Lieberman, to the families and the parents, to my family and my parents, especially to my mother who wrote that introduction. Thanks, Mom. And to the extraordinary Yeshiva University graduating class of 2010. Shalom. And as you heard, I came to this job about a year ago from about 3 decades of writing history. And as an historian, some of you may find this surprising, I always thought that my major task was decision making. Now, I can ask, why does a historian have to make decisions? Was a historian a prime minister or something? Now, a historian is not a prime minister, though I can think of some historians who think they can make good prime ministers. Historians are decision makers because they are confronted with masses of information. And from those masses of information, they must select the most relevant and compelling passages. Now, take, for example, the events of May 13th, 1948, the day before Israel declared its independence. Now, keep in mind, the Zionist leadership had less than 24 hours to prepare for the ceremony, and they had a budget of less than $500. There was a fear that the British, who were still running the country at the time, would come and arrest everybody. And there was a fear that the signing ceremony set for Friday afternoon would take too long and run into Shabbat. There was no agreed text for the declaration. The delegates debated whether it should mention the borders of the future Jewish state, and they debated whether the declaration should even mention the name of God. There was no parchment, nor was there a scribe to write on the parchment. Worse, get this, there was no agreement on what the new state was going to be called. There was no agreement on the name of the state. Now, many delegates thought that the name of the new state should be Zion. But other delegates thought, no, if we're named Zion and it comes to voting in the UN General Assembly as a state that begins with the letter Z, we get to vote last. Now, all this is going on while foreign diplomats were laboring furiously to delay Jewish statehood indefinitely, while hundreds of thousands of Holocaust survivors languished in displaced persons camps in Europe. And all this is going on while 6 Arab armies, lavishly armed with hundreds of tanks and planes and artillery pieces, prepared to descend on a population that was half the size of that of metropolitan Washington, D.C. today, a population armed with little more than handguns. Now, all this was going on while the Zionist leadership itself, fearing the massacre of every last Jew in Eretz Israel, debated extensively, painfully, whether or not to even declare the new state's independence. Now, imagine yourself being a historian in my place and having to choose between all those facts. Which are crucial to your narrative? Which are extraneous? Which of them best tells the story of Israel's extraordinary creation? Now, historians have to make some tough decisions.